Good evening. I'd like to call our regular board meeting to order and ask the treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker?
Present.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Vice President Cole?
Here.
Ms. Gibbs?
Here.
Ms. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Peretti?
Here.
Ms. Reyes?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And now I would like to call on April Knight, who is the president of the Columbus Administrators Association, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Principal.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, now I'll briefly go through the agenda just so we know the work we have before us this evening. We'll take public comment if we have any speakers. I don't believe we have any so far. We don't. We'll hear from our superintendent, after which we will hear from our treasurer and our internal auditor if she has anything to share. We will then take up our consent agenda, after which we will hear announcements and points of pride from board members. And after that, we will adjourn. We do not have executive session this evening. So having said that, the chair will now accept a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
And Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you. And I should say that our superintendent will need to leave around 6:30 for a speaking engagement, at which time the deputy superintendent will move into the role of superintendent for the evening. All right, having said that, let's now hear superintendent's report. Mr. Superintendent, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. Over the past 3 years, this board has been a strong supporter and champion of our district's transformational efforts to change the way we think about our service to students. No longer is our vision limited to kindergarten through 12th grade. Instead, you've provided the resources for us to expand and recognize the need to serve all students from cradle to career. And this week truly highlights that far-reaching range in age and aspiration. On Monday of this week, we welcomed our pre-kindergarten students into the newly revamped and remodeled Linden Park Neighborhood Early Childhood Education Center, and we have some pictures to share. The building is amazing. I applaud the work of our operations chief, Maurice Oldham, and his team who have turned the space into a warm, inviting, and engaging facility. The teachers and instructors and the entire early education team are also excited at how this unique partnership is already taking shape and creating an impact in the Linden community. On a new venture such as this, our community can often take a wait-and-see approach. On our first day, we had a couple of walk-ins, new families that were ready to be part of the center now that they've seen what's inside. And word is spreading across Linden that this center is a valuable community resource. I thank the City of Columbus, Education Director Rhonda Johnson, and the Ohio Department of Education for helping make this vision for early education a reality. So, moving from cradle to career, tomorrow we will celebrate our second annual All Seniors In rally, a unique event that will bring together all the members of our senior class of 2017 into one location. The goal is to motivate and support these seniors in taking charge of their futures, crossing the finish line at graduation, and then reaching higher by going to college, getting a job, beginning a career, or serving in the military. Thank you to several members of the board for sharing some inspiration through video. We want all 2,500 of the students who will be there tomorrow to be inspired, knowing that there is an entire community full of supporters who are ready to give them the opportunities to learn, grow, and launch a lifetime of success beyond the classroom and on into the world. The rally will feature keynote speaker Wes Moore, acclaimed author of the book, The Other Wes Moore, that delves into the very different trajectories that two lives can take when we give young people support. The event is a true collaborative effort between the district and our supporters at I Know I Can, the City of Columbus, again, Franklin County, the Columbus Chamber, and several of our partners in higher education, and we are excited. And finally, on this trip from cradle to career, I have a quick story to share about our next to oldest student. Ms. Mary Green, who is age 75, and she's earning her GED through our Marion Franklin Opportunities Center. I say she's our next to oldest because the oldest is actually 80 years old, and I met her this afternoon. I had the chance to chat with Mrs. Green again today. She is being featured in a news story by 10 TV's Kristen Hartman. Mrs. Green is just one of more than 1,005 adults that we are serving in our adult education program. In addition to earning GEDs, these adult students are learning valuable career and technical skills, earning certificates to serve as nursing assistants or bus drivers, and for a growing number, learning how to speak English. It's proof of the power of education at any age for any student in any part of our city. One last piece to my comments tonight, and this is related to a resolution that the board will consider, recognizing the highly impactful service of our principals and assistant principals. Please allow me to invite to the podium April Knight, President of our Columbus Administrators Association, and also Mark Jones, the Associate Director of the Ohio Association of Elementary School Administrators. And as they approach, let me thank the board for taking a moment to recognize National Principals Month. We have a tremendous core of building leaders across our district. We ask so very much of them, and you always deliver. I appreciate the dedication they show to their students, to their teachers and staff, to their students' families, and the communities they serve, and to their daily and often hourly contributions to our ongoing spirit of success. April?
President Baker, Vice President Cole, and board members, we appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening. I have some guests that I would like to introduce at this time. If I could have Kimberly Normand, who is the principal at Mifflin High School, Diane Agnes, principal at Woodward Park Middle School, and Andrew Smith III, principal at Valley Forge Elementary. They're here today to represent our colleagues who work tirelessly for the betterment of our children here in Columbus City Schools. And we appreciate very much the opportunity to stand before you in recognizing the wonderful work that all of our colleagues do.
Dr. Good, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I want to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening. We have been promoting, as a state association, we've been promoting October as National School Principals Month for several years. We, in fact, have been successful at the national level at getting action through Congress. I know that's hard to believe, but they actually have approved this as through a resolution as National School Principals Month. We are still working on the Ohio legislature to do the same for the state of Ohio. But in the 3-4 years that we have been promoting this, so far, you are the first Board of Education, the first superintendent to invite us to a meeting to actually recognize their principals. So I want to commend you for taking the lead on this. I think it shows that you truly do value your administrators, that you are empowering them to lead your 109 schools, and that you've placed a great deal of trust in their leadership. I know that they are rewarding that level of trust. We all recognize that the single greatest factor influencing the success of a child in school is having a highly effective teacher in the classroom, and we would never want to replace the classroom teacher, but the research shows that the second biggest factor is having a highly effective school leader. And I will tell you from just personal aside, I've had a lot of interaction with your principals in my years as the Associate Executive Director. I've met them at national conferences, at state conferences, through some of our workshops. And when they're out there in their native environment, you would be very proud of the way they represent Columbus City Schools. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for recognizing your principals during National School Principals Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
April.
All right, don't go too far.
April, do you want to?
All right, I'm going to read a resolution now that we will take up momentarily as part of our consent agenda. This is a resolution recognizing National Principals Month, whereas principals are educational visionaries, instructional leaders, assessment experts, adept communicators, budget analysts, facility managers, and special program administrators entrusted with our most valuable resource, our students, and whereas the dedication and determination of a principal sets the academic tone for their schools as they work collaboratively with teachers to develop and maintain high curriculum standards and set performance goals and objectives, and whereas principals work tirelessly to maintain academic accountability, to ensure a safe and productive learning environment, and to encourage and facilitate teachers' and parents' efforts to make a positive difference in the lives of young people, and whereas National Principals Month honors preschool, elementary, middle, and high school principals and recognizes the importance of school leadership in ensuring that every child is highly educated, prepared for leadership and service, and empowered for success as a citizen in a global community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Columbus Board of Education values and thanks all of our principals and assistant principals throughout the district for their contributions to our spirit of success, helping create a world-class model of public education that prepares members of our communities to reach their full potential, and be it further resolved that this board urge all Columbus residents to express their gratitude to our principals and assistant principals and recognize the critical role they perform for our students and schools each and every day. So we will adopt this as part of the consent agenda momentarily, but what I'd like to ask each of you to do is to step forward and take part in a picture. Any principals here or assistant principals? Mr. Jones as well? Mr. Superintendent, does that conclude your report?
It does.
Any questions for the superintendent? Board Member Peretti?
Just a few questions. First, related to Linden Park. And first, I just want to say, thank you for what this district has done. I know that we've always taken a measured approach in how we adopt and how we move forward, making sure that we have the right policies and the right things in place as we grow and sustain these programs, especially with early childhood. My question was, do you see this in the future being something that we're replicating in various areas of the city?
President Baker, Vice President Cole, to Board Member Peretti, indeed I do. And without promoting the issue that will be on the ballot on November 6th, you may recall that our budget projection did include the addition of 5 early childhood classrooms annually for each of the next 5 years. And they wouldn't just be those 5 classrooms each year, because we could operate 5 at the Early Childhood Education Center in the Linden Park neighborhood, but then there are other classrooms operated by other high-quality providers. And the goal is to make certain that we continue to promote those that have high-quality programs, and that we also offer a resource to the community for those that receive their education perhaps at home, perhaps at unlicensed facilities, like a relative or neighbor that may have operated a daycare or early childhood program for generations. So the intent is not to put anyone out of business. It's to support everyone being aware of the high standards that are necessary to work toward in order to prepare students to be successful in kindergarten and provide those sorts of resources, whether it be curricula, the teaching materials, consulting services, even problem solving, collaborative problem solving. And I'm very, very pleased. Ann Lockett and Candace Nespeka and Rochelle Wilkerson, leading our early childhood education team, have offered just that to Linden Park, and I think it will be the prototype for us to expand in other high-density neighborhoods where this would be a value proposition.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Good. Now, when it comes to folks that have been operating centers, maybe, like the mom and pop house down the street that's been doing this for generations and has been doing a great job at it. But are we going to be reaching out to those folks proactively just to make sure that curriculum and resources and all the things that we can offer as a school district are extended to those folks? How does that process actually look like?
And again, to Board Member Peretti, and in fact, we already began that process, not only through our print media outreach and our different digital and televised outreach, but in our door-to-door campaign that occurred just a bit over a month ago. And we know that in some neighborhoods, as I indicated in my remarks, it's very much a wait and see. They want a proof point before they'll cross the threshold. And so we were delighted that individuals recognized the quality of this center and its resources within an hour of its opening on Monday, and it gave us permission to work with their most valuable assets and have joined in that partnership. And not only individual families, but also other providers, and knowing that Head Starts around the city or the Childhood or Godman Guild and other providers also see this as a valuable way to collaborate and provide higher quality experiences for any of the children they serve. We already have evidence that that's happening.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
I apologize. When it comes to, all of our folks in our community being students essentially, and we're talking about some of our older residents, how does that work? Is it scattered through the city, some of these programs, some of the ABLE programs, some of the certification programs? How are we reaching out maybe to some of the senior communities? And how is it set up? Is it just in a few buildings, or is it sort of regional? I'm just sort of unsure.
So continue to Board Member Peretti. It's both and. It's a very good question. We certainly have in the Lexington facility, you're familiar, our adult basic literacy education program, and also we offer workforce development programs for adults there. But we're not limited to there. Where a need arises, and sometimes it's through our own efforts to look at the heat maps and the density of unemployed or the density of adults without diplomas, where we may establish a GED program. It could be a new settling of new Americans, where we know that limited English proficiency or English as a second language classes would be beneficial. But sometimes it's not even our own efforts, but the organic efforts of the community. So in the Marion Franklin community, it was very much an organic effort where an individual shared a need, and we recognized as a result of the success of our third grade guarantee that our citizens were looking for ways to put themselves on that pathway to prosperity if they weren't of school age. And so by offering these programs where they could earn an adult diploma or the equivalency diploma or adult work skills to be competitive for some of the many vacancies that exist not only in our city but also within our very district, it made sense to operate that there. We've been looking specifically at the west side, and I know the board's been a part of informal conversations relative to Wedgwood Junior High, and we've talked with Ms. Reyes about the possibilities there to support many of our immigrants in that neighborhood. It's high density. There's definitely a need for English as a second language services, for adult basic literacy education, and also work skills development. So It's all of the above. It's the full continuum. And as we heard through the ad hoc process, that's what our community expects in every neighborhood, that full continuum of services, whether they're generated and are initiated by the district or they grow from a community request.
I appreciate that, and I don't mean to editorialize, but I do get really excited about what we plan on doing in the future and how we continue to move this district forward and how our buildings can be flexible spaces that aren't just confined to K to 12, but a full continuum, like Dr. Good said, of services from cradle all the way through life. Thank you very much, Dr. Good. Thank you to our team.
Thank you.
If I may, to put a dot on that, even this afternoon, we were meeting with other providers of mental health services across our city and understanding what their needs are for expansion and whether those could be push-in or whether they would be satellite operations, and how we could do some cross-pollination so we're not duplicating services but being as efficient as possible with the precious resources that we have, and making certain, again, that we're generating a benefit to our city's future, which are their school-age children.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the superintendent? Any other comments from board members?
I have a comment.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, so to the resolution for our principals, I'm a very proud graduate of Columbus City Schools, and so I just want to echo my sentiments and to thank all of the principals that are throughout our district. I know Ms. Knight has walked out, but I'll tell you that my principals were Ms. Gorsuch at Alpine, Gerald Chappell at South Mifflin, Dr. Helen Horde at Franklin Alternative Middle School, and Jackie Rawls at the Columbus Alternative High School. And those four principals, all of them managed to paddle me, I think, at some point, or I got very close. But other than trying out the discipline policy with all of them exhibited a very strong characteristic that each and every one of our building principals have. They were caring, they were compassionate, they were forgiving, but they were moving us forward. They treated us all equal, and it didn't matter where we went or where we come from. When we were their number one priorities in their students, and every day I love our teachers, and they get it done in the classroom. But our building principals are our chief leaders, and they set the culture in our buildings. And a strong leadership in the front, you can get a lot done. And so I thank all of our principals, because leadership matters. Leadership matters. Leadership matters. And our principals are an amazing part of our educational story. They get it done. They do all the paperwork. The other stack that the teachers don't have to do, unfortunately. But I really didn't want that to go by without telling them how much we care about them, how much we appreciate them, many of them teachers themselves, and how they are just bringing together communities and partnerships every day on behalf of our kids and our families. So I thank you, and I thank all of the principals for our district. Just love them.
Hear, hear. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions related to the superintendent's report? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Superintendent. We'll move on to the treasurer. Mr. Treasurer, you're going to be presenting the 5-year forecast.
I am.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. President Baker, Vice President Cole, and members of the board. This is the first presentation this evening to the board of this 5-year forecast. The Finance and Appropriations Committee has reviewed the forecast at its meeting in September and has forwarded on to you for further consideration. I'm sure you recall that the board is required to adopt a forecast by the end of October of each fiscal year, and then to further adopt an update to that forecast by the end of May in each fiscal year. The 5-year forecast covers the general fund of the district, along with a portion of that service that is related to general fund operations. This forecast is, the fiscal years have been rolled back. This is what happens in October. So that FY16 now is shown as actual, and that's included along with fiscal years 14 and 15. And the projected years now include the additional year of fiscal 21. It's important to note that the revenues and expenditures included in this forecast are in line with the projections used during our levy millage discussions back in June. The forecast includes the additional personnel contemplated during those meetings, and the non-personnel budgets that were developed early in 2016 and then modified somewhat during the levy planning process. And last, I think, but not certainly least, is the fact that I would like to remind everyone that by law, by the construct of this, the rules that govern this forecast, we are not permitted to include any new revenue. We have an issue on the ballot, but that revenue may not be contemplated in this forecast. It was interesting, I did, as a kind of a sidebar comment, did have a conversation this afternoon about the forecast, and I had reiterated that what we did with expenditures in the planning process for the levy are included here, but the last piece of revenue is not. So this is a picture of what it looks like without that new revenue. So let's take a look at some of the changes since our May forecast. First of all, this comparison only includes the fiscal years out to fiscal year 20, because the May forecast was, at that point in time, only went out to fiscal 20. Fiscal 16 was, in fact, a projected year in last May. On the revenue side, there were two major revenue changes or modifications since then. First of all, actual revenues for fiscal 16 came in slightly higher than contemplated in the May forecast. And secondly, we included the phase-out of the win-win payments, which was unknown to us at the time the May forecast was put together. Here, overall, you can see that since the May forecast on the revenue side, those changes have had pretty much a negligible impact on our forecasted revenues. On the expenditure side, the reduction in expenditures that you see here were related to those modifications we made during the levying process as we pulled out certain capital items that we felt were eligible for possible alternative funding, specifically either from the permanent improvement levy or the bond issue should they be approved. Pulling these items out of the general fund allowed us to reduce the millage, the operating millage request, and then fund capital items out of capital funds, and then provide an ongoing source of non-general funds to pay for these items in the future. Again, all part of the levy plan. The combination of a slight reduction in projected revenues and a more significant reduction in estimated expenditures yielded an overall increase in the projected cash balance for each year of the forecast. Just point out that there still remains a significant deficit forecasted for fiscal 19-20, fiscal 19 and fiscal 20, and as you will shortly see, for fiscal 21 as well. Now, I know that changes in our financial numbers are often a focus of conversation and news articles and much consternation. So I thought that I might outline for you some of the processes in our budgeting and forecasting efforts that begin and end at different times. They often overlap with one another, and the output of one process is often the input to another process, and vice versa. So I've shortened this time frame down to just look at January of this year through where we are today. And we begin with the preparation that Mr. Gooding and the Budget Department does with all the departments in preparing what has been the first of a 5-year budget planning process cycle, and that ran pretty much January through May. Then in the March-April time frame, we began the preparation of the 5-year forecast. And in this first 5 months of the year, we had the Finance and Appropriations Committee take a look at the budgets and the 5-year forecast numerous times during that period. In May of 16, we then adopted the 5-year forecast, and that was followed in June by the adoption of the appropriation resolution, which was a 1-year document for fiscal 17. In late May and into June, we made modifications to those budgets as I described in preparation for the discussions beginning in June with the Levy Millage Committee. In July, we got the results of fiscal 16, which we could then include in our future planning discussions. And in August, we began the preparation of this forecast and had it reviewed in September by FAC. Again, the levy plan became an input to our October forecast as well as the fiscal year-end results. And there's the FAC meeting in September to review this document. That brings us to today, where you're hearing the first presentation, and subsequently in 2 weeks at the following board meeting in October, I believe that'll be the 18th, you'll be asked to adopt a resolution to approve this document. Again, since changes in our numbers seem to be a point at which we like to raise questions about how and when the numbers change and why, I'd like to just remind you that the changes that occurred were not necessarily between the May forecast and the October forecast. It was really between the May forecast and all the planning we did in the preparation for the levy request. So these changes were out there and discussed way back in June. And that in fact, from the levy millage committee time and the planning we did there really is no change to this forecast. With that in mind, let's take a quick look, although a boring look, I must say, at the differences between the levy plan and our October forecast. You'll see here the same revenue items have occurred. The actuals came in, which we didn't have at the levy plan time, and the win-win results, the phase out of win-win are here. That too was not available at levy planning time. But in this case, you can see it had, again, minimal impact on the overall revenue picture now out to fiscal, some 6 years now, out to fiscal 2021. On the expenditure side, you can see this is really rounding as we move from one spreadsheet to the next. Very minimal changes over the 6-year period. $1.8 million reduction on $5.5 billion is truly just rounding. So you can see that our levy plan truly is the basis for the forecast. Cash balances, the revenue changes are this a substantial contributor to this change, but overall these changes are insignificant relative to our levy planning. In summary, this forecast includes the FY16 results. It is in line with our levy plan. We've included the additional personnel, the non-personnel budgets as they have been modified. We'll point out that in all years of the forecast, revenues are under expenditures for each year, so we'll be having a declining cash balance. Again, as back in May, the first year with a negative ending cash balance is fiscal 19. There is no revenue, and for me, most importantly, this forecast does not present any basis in the rationale behind our levy request. And that concludes my presentation on the 5-year forecast.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Are there any questions from board members for the Treasurer on the 5-year forecast? Board members? Mr. Brown.
Just want to thank you for a very solid forecast, as well as the way it's presented. Presentation, is helpful. It looks good. It provides good information, and appreciate the work that has gone into it.
Mm-hmm. More than welcome.
Mr. Peretti?
Again, I just want to echo those sentiments. Thank you to Scott Gooding as well, and his team and your team. Over the years, as this Finance Committee has evolved, it's really been a really great way to really discuss a very complicated item, and bringing folks from the community together has just been a fantastic thing. I have a real general question, just as I was thinking through this presentation.
I'll give you a real general answer.
No, that's fine. So do we, when we talk, and I love it that we're keeping on our actuals, but a big part of our expenditures are the money that flow to charter schools. We generally see that increasing over the next few years as well, right?
That is correct.
And I know that, and it just came to me, we get reports of where that money goes to, correct?
Yes, we do.
Do we ever analyze that? Like, how much of our dollars annually go to, I don't know, like ECOT or any of those folks like that? I mean, Just curious. I mean, I know, I see it as a lump sum, but I've never seen, what it looks like divided up and where it flows to, and I would be interested in knowing that.
I'll take a risk. I actually shared a memo just the other day when I thought about ECOT, as I often do. And in response to some of the articles about the potential for about a $60 million clawback. And I thought to myself, gee, if the state of Ohio claws that money back, money which came from us and many other school districts around the state, I just wonder if we might get a refund. And if we did, and that money was collected equally, amongst all the school districts, which I'm sure it isn't, but I just looked at what portion of the overall money that went to ECOT in fiscal 16 came from us, and took that percentage and applied it to the 60 million, and thought that I might let somebody know I'd like to have about $6.6 million back, please. Now, whether or not we get that refund is a whole nother issue, but yeah, we do look at it. Mostly from our standpoint, it's to analyze it in terms of forecasting, not so much where it goes and why. But in our area, we look at it more from a forecasting standpoint, and then when I hear about a clawback, I wonder if we'll ever get anything back. It would be nice.
Thank you, sir.
Does that help?
It does.
Good.
Thank you. Board Member Hudson?
Thank you, President Baker. You know what, that I don't think we should hold our breath or spend that money. But boy, wouldn't that be nice. So that my comment just is, if looking back at one of the slides with the schedule, and you don't have to put on 18, I just want to say I think everybody's worked together so well, so that we have multiple touches to our financial performance and finances over the year. And so, what this does, it's not going to get rid of surprises, but what this does is stabilize these forecasts, and we want to thank the treasurer and especially and our budget director, because it helps minimize the opportunity for surprises. So, that it's all smoothed out because we've seen things and addressed them. So, say ECOT money, that would be a nice surprise. But we're not going to budget it till it's there. But I just want to point that out and say that, I think that the board's formation of this Finance and Appropriations Committee helps minimize the risk of those surprises. And just so you can see that, I think this graph really helps give us a great picture of all those touches and what that means.
President Baker?
Yes,
And
Mr. Treasurer.
I would echo the comments about the Finance and Appropriations Committee. It's a great vehicle for us to communicate. And kind of as a spoiler alert, so it's not a surprise, that the next update to the forecast that we're going to do is at the end of the state's 2-year biennium, the beginning of the next one. So we will be sitting in March and April wondering what the state's going to do with their budget. So we don't know what we'll have for fiscal 18 and 19 and beyond, but we'll be making an educated guess as to what that would be. So those are the things where if we know they're out there, and I believe in 2015 when we were at this in that same situation, I gave a couple of scenarios, which I think is best. If it's 5% increase in the cap, it's this. If it's 7.5, it's this. If it's 10, it's that. So we can somewhat get a feel for what's being discussed at the State House and give you an idea of the range of the impact that might have on our finances. Again, just so we're not surprised, we're aware that it can swing somewhat dramatically depending upon what those decisions are. And two, as we do our Finance Committee meetings every month, we review our actuals as they are coming in against the plan, and that helps us then potentially recast our forecast with that good and best information that we have. So as we move on, every month we're reconsidering where we are and can identify sooner rather than later whether or not we need to make an adjustment somewhere. So all in all, I think it's a good practice.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Treasurer Bajorek. I definitely enjoyed the time on finance, but to Mr. Peretti's question about analysis and about the dollars that are going to charter schools, do you have a good grasp on what would be the tipping point of the number of students we would have to regain or bring back to the district that would turn it around? And are you sharing that analysis with our recruitment team or our service team? How are we taking those numbers from just from dollar signs to really sharing it with the other side of the academic house, so we would know, I don't know, if we brought back this many, this is how it would impact elementary, this is how it would impact middle, this is how it would impact high school, and what that breakdown is per grade band. So if we were to do a recruitment effort to recoup some of those numbers, have you gotten that far in your analysis, or is that planned on coming up to make sure we have a good grasp of now with our numbers and with our budgeting, but how are we using that data and leveraging it on the other side of the house to attract and retain our students?
I would say the short answer is no, I have not done that analysis, except to the extent that we know that the students that leave us take more in state dollars than we receive. So that door would swing both ways. If a student comes back to us, then they're not a deduction. The charter schools and all the what I call school choice options are expense items to us. So you look at it sort of in the negative. As expenses increase, as more students leave, it reduces our bottom line. But if we could bring them back, that would increase our bottom line, not through an increase in revenue, but through a reduction of expenditure. And so the dollars that leave us would come back. Our revenue side doesn't change because we're capped. But we could manage that on the expenditure side. But as far as me sharing the information I get on the finance side with anyone else in terms of recruitment efforts, I don't do that. I don't know if I'm sure we're looking at the data of the students who leave to ensure that they are our students. That data is being checked.
From a customer service standpoint, I think it would be interesting to find out the financial impact of our work and make that connection from merely finance to how it impacts us every day in the building and in the classroom. And if a building principal that we honor today wanted to know how many students they could reclaim in their neighborhood and kind of what that financial impact would be, I think that would be an interesting tool. And I'm sure, as I see Dr. Michelle Klein's wheel spinning back there, that might be some type of data integration we could look at in the future.
Yeah, I don't know what data we have on where all I know is they come from, they're Columbus students, and there's a deduct. And those students, like our students in the foundation formula, the dollar amount that is allocated to that student, there are so many different variables, it's hard to say specifically that one student is worth $4,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. There are numerous vocational ed categories, numerous special ed categories, and the student will be on a variety of lines in terms of state funding. I read an article somewhere that recently said, and I never counted it, that in our state foundation formula there's like over 240 variables, and many of those variables have to do with how we categorize students for funding purposes. So it would require some drilling down specifically. And I know on the finance side, I don't have that kind of data.
But we do know if they're going to ECOT or Horizon.
Oh, yes, we do, yes.
Yeah, at that, yeah.
Yep.
We know where to go get them.
We know where to go get them. I like that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Board Member Peretti, I believe, was first, and then Ms. Hudson.
Well, I just wanted, just this conversation again. I just want to, again, say thank you again for this process that we put together. It just brings up it just, to me, I find it's very difficult for school districts to build into a legal document an assumption into a 5-year forecast. And I look forward to us being the largest district and how we put together our legislative goals that we see as a district in the future. I look forward to our board talking about that. But these are sort of the things that, to me, I question all the time. Why would the state put on to local school districts this question mark into a big part of their funding and their operation, and then they have to then project that out into the community. And again, like we said about school funding, it's complicated and it's not very clean and easy to understand. And what we've been able to do in Columbus with our finance committee, with this team, has really been able to really shake out a really complicated subject and talk about it and essentially, you know, stay ahead of some of these curveballs that are constantly coming. But again, that to me has always been kind of ridiculous, and I just look forward to our board talking about our legislative platform and how we project that to the state, and just look forward to that. So it was more of a comment. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Board Member Hudson?
Well, thank you, President Baker. Treasurer Report, is there I know we've used a net number for, you know, how much more we pay out for the charter students. Is there a per student value? Have we put a per student value on that? Like, how much more do we pay per student?
We have, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's several $1,000s more that go out than come in per student. And that's an average.
Dr. Good looks like he's going to chime in.
Generally, because the local share versus the state
Mr.
share makes
Brown.
up the per pupil amount is different from area to area.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to raise that again at the Finance Committee,
Sure.
just to, as a refresher.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Have you anything else for the board this evening?
I have nothing else this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And that brings us to our internal auditor. Madam Internal Auditor, would you like to share information with the board this evening?
Thank you, President Baker. Actually, I do not have a report for the board this evening.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on then to consideration of our consent agenda. Is there a motion that the board approve and adopt the consent agenda as it is presented? Moved and...
Second.
All right. Discussion from board members on any particular piece of legislation. Mr. Peretti.
Just real briefly, just if we could go over generally 10.3, request for approval of resolution to transfer territory to the New Albany Plain Local School District.
Yes, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. To Board Member Peretti, I'm going to ask our Chief Legal Counsel, Warren Braverman, to respond.
President Baker, members of the board, Mr. Peretti, thank you for the question. Let me just lay out as briefly as I can the situation here that leads to this resolution. In this case, the board is requested to finalize the transfer of 5 parcels of territory which are located in the city of New Albany and not in the city of Columbus. The developer of these 5 parcels that are vacant right now has petitioned the State Board of Education to transfer, and the State Board of Education approved the transfer of these positions, and now we're here tonight to ask the board to take the steps necessary to complete the transfer. So these 5, let me describe for you for a moment these 5 parcels. As I said, they're located in the city of New Albany. They are surrounded by other lots with homes in which the students go to the New Albany Plain Local School District. The oddity here is that the district boundaries between Columbus City School District, New Albany Plain Local School District run through each of the properties. So right through them. So part of it's in New Albany Plain Local, part of it's in Columbus, and each one of the 5, it's not just some are one and some in the other. I've been practicing law for nearly 40 years, and I've never seen a situation like this. But there you are. So when we look at the situation, we see that all of the things that the State Board of Education looks at in transferring property weigh in favor of the petition to transfer. We've not been shy about challenging transfers, but in this situation, it's different. First of all, it's significant that these properties are all located in the city of New Albany. When we've challenged transfers before, and we've done that fairly routinely, Those properties are usually situated in the city of Columbus. Some property owner or group is trying to move their properties to a suburban district. Not the case here. Second of all, and what's also very significant, is that all the houses surrounding these property are already in New Albany Plain Local School District. There is no question in my mind that this petition would be successful if it were litigated. That if it were litigated, there would be expenses to the district and to both districts and to the developer, but that the result is a virtual certainty. And so with all that in mind, the administration has recommended to the board that the appropriate thing, the right thing to do in this specific individual case is to approve this property transfer. Happy to answer any other questions that you might have, but I hope this helps explain the background of this resolution.
Thank you, General Counsel. Are there other questions from board members on this particular piece of legislation? All right. Any other questions from board members on any other item of legislation contained within the consent agenda? Mr. Vice President.
Just a very brief comment on section 11.2, which is the agreement to enter into agreement for purchase of services from Cambian Learning. I just wanted to give a brief comment that we've done a really exceptional job as a district in making our focus on student achievement and providing supplemental services for them that really help boost their score. This is a science supplemental piece that got some pre-testing. Students got access in middle school to being able to use this software and actually saw their grades jump in average overall in the total categorical thing. So there are 3 different categories, but overall they saw an average of about 45% jump in their test scores. This is something that also aligns with the AIR piece. I'm just really excited about this software. This minimal investment of $40,000 or so is something that really can pay an incredible benefit to our students in helping their test scores go up and preparing them for any number of things and information that they have to successfully transition academically. So I'm really excited about this. This is just one of those ways that, once again, we're getting it right, and I think it's important for the community to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Other questions or comments from board members prior to the vote? All right, Mr. Treasurer.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, except for 10.3, where I abstain.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Peretti?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Superintendent?
President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board, per usual, it's my pleasure to introduce one of our administrators that was promoted this evening based upon the board's recent action, and from a speech and language pathologist to supervisor. And Kyra Schlombach, if you're here, would you please stand, and congratulations. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. All right, now we will move into announcements. So I'd like to go first, if there's no objection. And I just want to acknowledge Board Member Reyes for being selected as a 2016 Central Ohio Champion of Diversity. And Ms. Reyes will be recognized at an awards luncheon tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that. So congratulations, Ms. Reyes. And I would also like to acknowledge a few other individuals, Ms. Gibbs for her nomination to the All Ohio School Board by the OSBA, Ohio School Boards Association. They were recognized at an event a few nights ago, along with Mr. Oldham, our Chief Operating Officer for the 2016 OSBA Exemplary School Employee Award. And I think we may have a picture of this. There we go. Also, Senator Charlita Tavares was selected by OSBA as their 2016 Champion of Education for her support of strong education policy. Senator Tavares has been a friend of this district for as long as I can recall. Finally, presenters from our last meeting, you may recall, PACT, Partners Achieving Community Transformation, were also recognized, and you see the amazing T Street there in that picture, as OSBA CCS Friend of Education. So I would like to congratulate all of them for their hard work and support of the district. Thank you very much for your service. And Ms. Gibbs, being our senior statesman, if you will, on the board, having served 10 years, would you like to offer any brief words of wisdom?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Board members, any of you have any points of pride or brief announcements you would like to make prior to our adjournment? Ms. Gibbs.
Yes. So if you are interested in serving on the 2016-2017 Innovation and Reform Committee, we will have an application available for you this week to express interest, and our next meeting will be, Dr. Stanford? Tuesday, November 2nd. And Election Day is the week after that, right? November the 8th. So the next meeting of the Innovation and Reform Committee is Tuesday, November 2nd. But we are putting out an application for a few new members. So if you are interested, please look on our district website and look forward to your email. And please submit a quick application and to express your interest in serving on our committee. Innovation and Reform is a part of the board, and the goal is to have a two-way dialogue between key stakeholders and community stakeholders about ways we can improve not only our academic services, but improve operational efficiency through brand new ideas and ways we can work together to make them come to life.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Thank you. And I would like to also recognize a member of our External Monitoring Committee who is here this evening, Mr. Tom Dillard. Thank you for your service. And if there's nothing else for the good of the cause this evening, the chair will entertain a motion that we adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
And Mr. Brown?
Yes.
That motion carried. Thank you.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.